So welcome everybody to the webinar. There we go, got it, there we go. So my name is James, James Kendall from Woodland Classroom up in Northeast Wales. I'm in Wrexham, and lovely part of the world, lots of lovely green hills, lots of forests to play in. And myself and my wife Lee, we've been running forest school since 2014, but I've been wandering around, hovering around outdoor education and conservation work long before then. So yeah, as time's gone on, my experience went more and more into the education side of things. And not only do I not only am I a forest school leader, but also I'm a bushcraft instructor as well, and we do a lot of wild food foraging too. So maybe some of you guys have seen some of our online events before. We do monthly online wild food workshops and tree ID workshops and all kinds of good stuff. So if you have come because you've been one of ours before, welcome, thanks for coming back. We're going to get straight on because there's a lot of information tonight. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope everybody isn't going to get overloaded here. Now, how do we go into slideshow mode? There we go. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. There we go. There's me in the corner. Okay, folks, this is me. There's Lee, and there's our two little people which appeared over lockdown and since. So life has changed a little bit for us in the last few months. As you can see, so myself and my wife Lee run Woodland Classroom, and I'm just going to get the chat up as well, folks, so I can see what's going on. Where's the chat gone? I can't see it. Never mind, I don't know why. So as Matt was saying at the start, if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. I can't see the chat too much when I'm sharing the screen, but if Matt sees lots of questions coming up again and again, he might just jump in and say, everybody's asking this, can you clarify? But there is going to be an open Q&A session as well. This is me, as I said, bushcraft, forest school, all things woodsy. I'm in the right crowd. I know we're all tree people here, but tonight is all about, we might love being among the trees, but do we always know what we're looking at? This is about winter tree ID. And of course, we're in November now, getting to mid-November. And although we've had a bit of a mild autumn, winter will fast approach and it'll be upon us. And winter time is the time when more people do struggle with their tree ID because we can't just use the leaves. So we're going to be looking deeper, and we're going to be looking ahead, and hopefully everything you're going to see here is going to really help inform your tree ID over the next few months, when you can really spend some time and look at what you're looking at. And let's just go through what we're going to talk about tonight. So a solid grounding and how to identify trees in winter. How to look at features including buds, bark, tree form, leaf litter, and other seasonal signs. So everything that isn't, the leaves on the branch or fruits, berries, that kind of thing, but there are sometimes some stuff hanging around. You're going to learn 3 key principles of tree ID. So 3 little kind of hacks and tricks I've come up with to kind of get you in the zone to really help you with your tree ID, especially in winter as well. Then we're going to go into older versus elder, 2 similar sounding trees, but which is which. Now, hopefully, some of you guys are familiar with some of the common trees, and I suspect some of you are, and you know your trees to a certain extent, but hopefully you'll also get some little other tricks as well, and some deeper knowledge and a few things maybe not thought of before. But then we're going to look in detail and focus at field maple and then hazel. And then look at some similar species, so beech and hornbeam, 2 trees which can often get confused for each other. I'm going to go through some book recommendations, ones for winter tree ID and tree ID in general, some resources. We're going to do a quiz, and I'm going to be a bit kind and a bit cruel in the quiz, and we'll see what you guys get. It's going to be fun. So we're going to do a picture quiz as well, and then I'm going to pass on some ideas for tree ID activities that you can use in forest school, some stuff that I've done and had success with. And if other people got ideas too, feel free to throw them in the chat during that time, because we've got a lot of experience in the room tonight, so that's great. And then we're going to do an open Q&A. And also I have an exciting announcement about an online tree ID course I've created, but more about that later, folks. Now, can everybody hear me and see me okay then? Is everything working all right?
Oh, no. Mama.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good, there's a child. Hello, you're very welcome also. Good, I'm going to share my screen again. Right, there we go. Right, here we go, folks. I'm just going to see if I can see the chat. No, for some reason I can't see the chat while sharing my screen. I don't know why. I usually can, so I can't see what people are asking. Also, for anybody's interested, I've got these these tree ID guides I've created, and I'm going to send you a link to get a downloadable PDF of this. This is a print-off version I've got, and if you came to the Forest School conference last year, you might have picked up one of these from me because I was giving them out, but I'll send you a link to this, and it's a great thing you can print out and use with kids, with your groups, going into winter with all the most common trees on. So I'll send you a link for that at the end of the workshop too, folks. So let's get into it. Matt, I'll just say again, I can't see the chat, so if there are any problems, do turn your sound on because I can't see anything except what I'm presenting at the minute. So if I'm missing a trick or I've lost my sound, just shout. Here we go. Let's start with the key principles of tree ID that I've come up with. These are 3 little tricks that I use. Number 1 is tune in. Number 2 is begin with a branch. And number 3 is alternate or opposite. So there's a question there. Let's break down what I mean by that. Number 1, tune in to your surroundings. And this is a really good thing to use anyway. And a lot of you guys might do this before you start your Forest School sessions. Just have a few minutes yourself. You might make yourself a cup of tea on the fire before the kids arrive and just zone in to where you are. And that's really important because it just puts us hopefully at the pace of nature, gets us thinking about our environment and get us looking deeper and wider at what's going on. This is really good for tree ID, really good for foraging, really good for wildflower ID, bird watching. It's about being more present and looking deeper. When I mean tune in, it means start to ask questions about where you are. So if you're out just in farmland, general countryside, you know, you can have an idea about the kind of trees you're going to see in your area. If you're up on highlands, in mountain uplands, then there's other species which you're more likely to see. The list of species could go down. If you're on a sand dune system, there's a few species that you're probably going to see and some you're definitely not going to see. If you're in an urban environment, the list of species is going to go like this. That brings up one thought that I must say is that today is mostly about native and naturalized trees. We're not really going to be talking about non-natives because we'd be opening a big can of worms there. So we're talking about our kind of native and naturalized trees. So tuning in your surroundings is really important because the more you do it, the more useful this becomes. Because when you arrive into a site, let's say you arrive into a National Trust estate or country estate, you're walking through the estate, you're ticking off trees that you know, and you come across something, you think, what's going on there? It doesn't fit the picture, but then you think, I'm on a country estate, there's lots of planted exotics here as well. Okay, so I might expect to see, you know, things like your giant sequoia, your home oak, a walnut tree, things that you probably aren't going to get out in the countryside. So tuning in is really useful. The more you do it, the more useful it becomes to slow down. And it's about realizing what you're probably not going to see. And it's all about whittling down the list of trees. Number 2 is begin with a branch. Okay, so when we look at the whole tree, especially in winter, it could be a bit intimidating, not knowing where to start. There's so many bits of the tree to look at. Where do we begin? Well, everything you need to know about the tree is at the end, the tip of a healthy branch. Everything is there. That will tell you what the tree is. So always begin with a branch. That makes us focus on a point. It makes us look closer and deeper straight away. And we're starting to look at those details. So always begin with a branch. Grab a healthy branch from the tree and have a look at it. Do check that the branch is attached to the trunk that you're looking at, especially when the trees are together. I've done it and picked a branch and gone, that doesn't match the bark, and then realized, oh no, it's that tree over there. So it does happen. So everything you need to know is in the branch. Principle number 3 is a question. We've got our branch and we ask this question, is it alternate or opposite? And by that, we mean look at the bud or leaf arrangement, okay? Now in winter, we're looking at the buds generally, unless we're looking at conifers. So the buds, are they alternate or oppositely arranged? Let me tell you what I mean by that. Here's a top graphic that I created. So alternate on the left, opposite on the right. The buds and leaves on the trees are usually arranged alternately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or opposite 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, that's really important because once you spot that, you can eliminate a load of trees from your inquiry. If it's in opposite arrangement and it's out in the countryside, it's probably one of only about 6 or 8 things. If it's alternate, it's a lot more because most trees have alternate arrangements. Okay, so this is really important because again, you're looking closer. Let's show you some examples. Here's the bird cherry, quite a common tree in the countryside, and that one is alternate, isn't it? We've got 1, 2, 3. They're not in opposite pairs. Okay, so that's alternate arranged. Here's sweet chestnut in winter. Nice bit of frost on that. arranged alternately. Quite a different twig, as we can see, quite different buds. They're on little platforms, aren't they? Yeah, that is alternately arranged on that one. Sweet chestnut is an introduced species. It's not native, it's naturalized. Here's something different. Sycamore in opposite pairs. See the difference? We've got two. There's a terminal bud. You can sometimes get two at the end. And there's another one on the opposite side here, but we can't see it because it's on the other side of the stick. So there's 2, 4, 6 like that. And they're always turned like that. So 2, 4, 6. Sycamore is a maple tree. All maples have opposite buds. So that's a useful thing to know as well. Whoops, let's go back. Here's Guelder Rose. Yeah, Guelder Rose, that has opposite buds. Lovely little teardrop buds, very shiny ones, and often has 2 little terminal buds too. Guelder Rose, very clearly opposite buds. Very useful. Of course, if the buds are opposite, the leaves will be opposite when they come out as well. Okay. There are some trees which are, slightly annoying for this rule. Nature doesn't like to be pigeonholed, does it? It likes to be complicated, which is why we love it. So this is the oak. It is alternate though, isn't it? If we have a look, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no opposite here, is there? And there's no opposite here. However, at the tip of the tree, you do get a cluster of buds. And that's something you do get with some trees. You get a cluster, and a little cluster of buds at the tip could point you to it being one of a few things. Again, this stuff becomes more useful the more you use it and the more you recognize these patterns. Here's wild cherry, which also is alternate, but has clusters of buds at the end. Okay, so there we go. That's really useful to know. That's I'll just stop my screen share for a minute, just check everybody's fine with the chat. Okay, yes, there's going to be a quiz. People are saying excellent. So that's the 3 rules of tree ID. Let's get into the next little bit. If you follow those rules, you won't go far wrong in the grand scheme of things. Am I sharing my screen? Can everybody see that? Yes, they can. That's fine. Okay, so let's go into detail and put that into practice. Now, this is normally where I'd say in the chat room, tell me if you think this tree is alternate or opposite, but I can't see the chat room, so you'll just have to decide for yourself, folks. And if you're watching the recording, have a look. This is the older. Is it alternate or opposite? So it's alternate, isn't it? Which is what most trees are. We can see 1, 2, 3 there. They're not in opposite pairs. When I think of the alder in winter, I think of the color purple. Everything about the alder is kind of purple in winter. The buds are a beautiful purple color. They're like little cotton buds, really. Lovely, kind of slightly velvety, beautiful little buds on there. And the catkins, the male catkins can be purple as well. These are a little bit past the best bit of them being purple, but you do get a lovely purple color to them as well. So a really good thing to look out for with alder, to remember that color purple. These catkins, you can see that a little bit better here as well. Now, this is interesting. Trees, how they reproduce. Most trees have male and female parts on the same tree. So these catkins are the male parts, and they'll elongate and then release all the pollen, and that will go over to the female flower. Whereas some trees have just female trees and just male trees, and so they have to be both for them to do what they need to do, like the holly, for instance, or willows. But the alder has both on. These are the male catkins, okay? And these catkins will hang around in winter being quite tarred, which is good to know. Take a note of these catkins, because we're going to see another tree soon which also has catkins in winter. The alder bark, when it's young, is very smooth, dark, kind of greenish, and with these speckles on them, these lenticels all over them, these breathing pores, really quite distinctive when you get to know it. Alder also loves being next to water. Loves to have wet feet. These are the female flowers that come out in winter as well. A little bit kind of late into winter, these come out, and they look like little pink cotton buds, and those male catkins will elongate and the pollen will go across and do what it needs to do to those beautiful female flowers, and those female flowers will mature into this. And if you're going to take one takeaway from alder in winter, it's these cones. They're not actually botanically cones, but for our purposes and for kids, they're cones. They're fine. They look like little cones. It's the only broadleaf tree that you're going to find cones on in the countryside. So if you've got little cones hanging around, then it must be the alder. And these hang around right through winter, even though they're spent and they're old and they've dropped all their seed, and that seed's flown in the water down to make new trees. These cones hang around, and that's what those female flowers turn into. So if it's got cones on, it's an alder tree. Really useful to know. Here's the bark of alder, very dark, craggy. It kind of sucks the light in, although there's a lot of lichens or algae or whatever's moss is grown on here. It's giving it a green hue. And you get a lot of this bushy growth, this epicormic growth at the base as well. So yeah, very kind of dark barked tree all round. With bark, some trees it's more useful with the bark in winter than others. Alder isn't especially useful. Once you know it, but I would say the cones, the catkins, and the purple buds are the #1 features above the bark. Where something like a birch tree, most of us will know that from the bark straight away. This is something though, look at tree form. This is the alder tree again next to the water by the canal, classic alder there. It does tend to have this spreading horizontal branch look to it. And when you're driving along, obviously look at the road, but as you see trees as you're flashing by, you might see what you're seeing in the left here. That is classic alder with these horizontal branches coming out. You can even, if you look close, see the little cones silhouetted as well. So that's a good thing to look out for with alder. Look out for those spreading branches. And there's some finds there that I've got some bits of leaf hanging around, cones, all kinds of stuff. Good stuff all around. Okay, now this is elder. We've talked about alder. This is elder. They sound similar. They're very different. As you can see, for the Latin name, it's completely different. The elder, here we go. Here's the bark. Now, the bark, when it's mature, is strongly, it's kind of strongly fissured, but also you can push your thumb into it and it gives like cork. So that's a really good way, kind of a sensory way to ID this tree. And it's good to engage different senses. And that can work for different learners as well, different learning styles. Engaging the senses when you're looking at tree ID. So it's a good thing to know. The elder is a much smaller shrubby tree, whereas the alder is a much grander tree all round when it gets going. But one of the key things about the elder is that it's the first native tree to have its leaves out. And those leaves can be seen as early as late January. They can come out, just bursting out like that. So if you're scanning the woodland in the kind of understory or hedgerows, in the back end of January, start of February, you might well see a bit of this. And that it will pretty much be the elder. So it's a really good thing to look out for. And also, elder, one of the trees which are first to lose their leaves in autumn. And they've been hanging around on the branch quite a while by that point. So that kind of follows. Interesting. So, something to look out for. Those leaves can come really early. Another thing to look out for winter is fungi associated with some trees. And this is the jelly ear fungus. I wonder how many of you guys have actually used this with kids at your forest school groups and got them to either try it out, wobble it like an ear, or even cook it, because it's an edible fungus. It doesn't taste very good. It doesn't really taste of anything, but it's an easy one to recognize. But from an ID point of view, it very much grows on dead elder. Sorry, there you go. I've mixed them up now. You do get it on a dead sycamore as well. I've seen it on that, but mostly dead elder is what it's associated with. So it's a really good thing to look out for. When it rains, this black kind of dark brown fungus swells up and goes wobbly like jelly. You can flick it. When it's dry, the weather, it crisps up and goes blacker and shrinks right down. So it's a really good thing to look out for, but it only grows on the dead wood. Okay, now we come back to that principle number 3. Are the buds alternate or opposite? And as we can see, they are very much opposite, aren't they? So although alder and elder have similar names, once you know that alternate and opposite rule, you're never going to get them confused, because if it's opposite, it's no way it can be an alder, and vice versa. And the buds have got a nice little purple hue to them. So a bit of purple, a bit like the alder there, but quite different when you look at them. And even those ones on the left are just starting to sprout into leaf. There you go. You can see the buds there in opposite pairs on the twig. Very clear there. And then as we look in the skyline, this can be quite useful when you start to look at the tree from a distance. Can you see in that canopy there the opposite paired buds? And I hope you can see that in the picture. When you look close, you can start to see this opposite and alternate rule even before you get close to the tree. And this is where that becomes really useful, because you're approaching the tree and you go, oh yeah, the buds are opposite. I can see that in the canopy. And then that just immediately starts knocking away species that it could be, as you then get closer, and then you can confirm your ID. So it's a really useful little trick to use all around. So give it a go, folks, when you're on your walks this weekend or your next forest school session. There's the leaves first coming out, and a few key features: the buds in opposite pairs, the early leaves, and that corky bark that gives way under the thumb. There we go. One more look at the elder as well. Okay, folks, I'll just check that everything's okay in the chat. Jelly ears are great soaked in elderberry syrup, then covered in chocolate. Nature's Turkish delight. That's what Laura Baird says. That sounds great. We've done a version of that, but we did it in brandy as well. And then once it was dipped in chocolate, we sprayed it with edible gold spray. It made it about as exciting as a jelly ear fungus can be. But it's good fun all around. Right, we'll go back to the presentation to folks. Where's me? There we are. Okay. So let's look at a bit more depth now at a tree. We're going to look at field maple, our only native maple. Sycamore is a maple, but it's not native. It's a naturalized tree that was introduced to this country. So field maple is the only one. There are a lot of maples in this country brought in from all over the world. But this is the only one you should really see out in the countryside proper. Otherwise, if it's not, it's going to be planted. Here's field maple here. And straight away, can we see, is it alternate or opposite? In that picture on the right, can you start to see that in the outline? It's not a particularly tall tree, field maple. It doesn't get that big. Oh, there we go. So there we go. We can see now the buds are in opposite pairs. Yeah, so opposite paired buds there. So all maples are in opposite pairs. So that's a good one to look out for there. And also you can see the winged seeds as well, which are called samaras, which is a lovely name for those. Same with sycamore seeds. We tend to call them helicopters, but the actual name is a samara. And they spread by wind dispersal, of course. So the wings are how the seeds travel a little bit further from the tree and they spin in the wind. They spin much better if you actually break the seed in two and just do one wing rather than both of them. It works much better. But the key thing with the field maple seeds is that the wings tend to be out like that, straight, pretty much most of the time, not always, where sycamore wings tend to be more at a 45-degree angle like this, so kind of pointing down, whereas they're flat with the field maples. That's a good thing to look out for. The leaf itself is a maple leaf, as we know. When you think of a maple leaf, think of the Canadian flag. That's a maple. It's called sugar maple. Is big, and the maple syrup is big in Canada, isn't it? And they have those lovely displays in Canada, New England, of maple colours. But field maple has a maple leaf like the Canadian flag, but in miniature. Tend to have 5 pointed lobes, sometimes 3, but that's just because they're a little bit kind of underdeveloped. But generally, they should have 5. A little bit rounded as well, less jagged and less large than the sycamore too. This is something to look out for. Not all branches have this on the field maple, but they have what's called crocodile's back, which is a great thing to show the kids. Like, can they see the crocodile hiding in the tree, perhaps? You could do something with that as an activity. And these little corky ridges can run along the branches. And again, like the elder, you can push those corky ridges and they will depress. They're quite soft. Not all field maple have this, but it's pretty common. So if you see it, it's a good thing to use. These ridges like a crocodile's back. So a really good thing to look out for with field maple. There you can see it on a much larger branch. That's about this much in diameter. So it's a big one all around. There we go. So there's the crocodile's back ridges all the way along. Good thing to look out for. Now we go to leaf litter. The leaves might not be on the tree, but they can be, of course, on the ground. Not all leaves hang around. Ash leaves don't really hang around that much. Older leaves don't really hang around too much. So some leaves, leaf litter is more useful than others. So like oak and beech, they've got a lot of tannins in them, so they hang around a long time, whereas other leaves disintegrate. But we do have to be careful with leaf litter because, of course, the leaves could have blown in from a neighbouring tree. So with leaf litter, as an ID tool in winter, it's more useful the more isolated the tree is, because, of course, they would less likely blown in from somewhere. Whereas if a tree's in a woodland, you've got to be a little bit more careful and open your eyes, tune in to your environment and look at what's next door and just check you're not picking up leaves from the oak that's next to your field maple, for instance. But what you can do is maybe not use leaf litter as your #1 ID point. So you could go to the branch, look at the bud arrangement, look at everything else, and then think, I think it's field maple, then go down to the ground, and then you've got maybe the fallen seed heads, the samaras, and then also the field maple leaves. That's interesting because in this picture, what we've got is a lot of ash keys. So that's the ash tree, those keys there. That's not from field maple. So there you go. So there's an example of something blowing in from elsewhere. So leaf litter is useful, but not always the #1 thing you go for. I use it more to confirm what I'm looking at rather than the first thing I go to. Unless the tree is totally isolated, in which case, you know, you've got a pretty fair bet. There's some really good pictures of the the wing seeds there, the samaras with the wings out at 90 degrees to each other. Oops, well, there we go. And more little opposite buds there. You can see that sometimes the tree splits at the end, but it's still, so there's a good variation there in the different ways it looks. But go back a bit to the branch and you'll still see that opposite arrangement there. So it's a bit knobbly, but they're still in opposite pairs, aren't they? So don't just look at one branch. If it's confusing you, pick another healthy branch until you see something that maybe looks a bit more familiar to you, because we do get, you know, deformities in nature here or there. And there's a really good close-up of the three different key points there: the maple leaf, the seed head, and the bud itself. Here we go. Here's a little mini quiz for you folks. Have a little look at this. 3 maple leaves here, but what's going on? Are they all from the same species? I'll give you a second to have a little look before I reveal. So what we have here, we have the field maple below. We have the sycamore to the left, which is a naturalized tree, often with the black tar spots on it. Not seen in this one, but sycamore is the only one that has those black tar spots. And then there's the Norway maple on the right, which is probably the next most commonly planted maple, especially on urban fringe. And that is like a sycamore leaf, but turned up to 11. It has much more spectacular colors in autumn, and it's much more jagged. Look at it compared to the sycamore. It's got much more jagged points on it. So yeah, it also gives you a good comparison in the size between sycamore leaves and field maple leaves there as well. Cool. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute, have a quick check in with the chat. Are we going to remember elder buds are opposite by visualizing the elders? That's nice. Somebody says, do we remember the elder buds sitting opposite each other by visualizing the elders of the family, granny and granddad sitting opposite each other? I like that. That's brilliant. I said we've got a lot of creativity and experience in this room. So if you've got a little way to remember, I like it. Let's use it. Brilliant. Good stuff. Let's crack straight on with the next one. I think we're going to look at hazel, folks. Another common tree that we might well know. And I hope a lot of us use hazel a lot in our crafts, because it's one of the best trees for campcraft, bushcraft, and whittling, because of course it coppices very well. It regrows on quite a fast cycle, so we can harvest it sustainably and use it for all kinds of materials. But hazel's a great one in winter because it has a couple of really key signs. It's very active in winter, actually, hazel. First of all, male catkins, a bit like the alder there. But these ones are much more yellow in their color when they're mature. They start off quite hard and small, and then as we get near the back end of the winter, they just elongate and they turn into what people call lamb's tails. That's a country name for them. You can see why, dangling down off the branch. And on a nice clear day, you could knock them and you'll get a cloud of pollen, which is a good thing for kids to do. We made little wands with these, pollen wands with kids in late winter. They've tied them to a twig and then gone around pollinating the little hazel flowers or other things. And it's just a nice little easy activity for little ones to do and understand about pollination. But as we look at that hazel tree from a distance there on the right, you could see that massive catkins, and you're going to see this kind of February time. This is really going to stand out. And you're going to see this, you know, again at roadside, just a mass of these catkins. It's got to be the hazel with these yellowy catkins dangling down like this. Not the only tree that has catkins, but very distinctive. But the jewel to look out for is this. If you've seen this before, put it in the chat room. It'd be nice to see who knows about this one. This is the hazel flower. This is the female flower. It's beautiful. It's pretty small. Comes out in winter, around the same time as all those catkins mature, of course, because they're doing what they need to do. And these will turn into the hazel nuts. They're beautiful little flowers that look like sea anemones like this. Unfortunately, they don't wave around like that. That'd be beautiful, wouldn't it? But they're lovely things to look out for. And it's a great thing to get kids looking closer, to look for this little splash of color in what could otherwise be a very gray, you know, damp, dark, wintry day. And they suddenly get this little flash of tropical pink on the hazel. Beautiful stuff. And a really nice one to look out for. There's something else you can see on this hazel as well. Can you see the hair on the twig here? There's a little rhyme that Dave Watson from Woodland Survival Crafts taught me, which is hairy hazel, which is an easy one to remember. Again, a good one for kids. If it's a hairy twig, it could well be the hazel there. So it's a good thing to look out for there, folks. But that hazel flower is a beautiful find. Here's a little collection of hazel finds. We can see the leaves fallen. Now, hazel's one of those trees that sometimes does have leaves on it in the winter. It tends to get a bit confused sometimes. Sometimes you do get a bit of growth of the leaves, but the main flush is, of course, in the spring. But there's the fallen leaves, roundish in shape. quite toothed and with a drawn out tip. That's important. Is it alternate or opposite? Which is very much opposite. Sorry, alternate. There we go. Very much alternate, isn't it? And do you know just how the twigs kind of zigzag as well from bud to bud? That's something to look out for too. Nice little shape. You get that with it as well. Sometimes the buds are red. Sometimes they're green. Depends, I think, how much sunlight it's got or how far they are along. And there's the hazelnut shells as well, which is the other key feature you can look out for, of course, on the ground. We rarely get to actually forage the hazelnuts because the squirrels snaffle them all before we can get them. But if you can find them, they're good. But of course, all the nuts are still on the ground. You can find them in little caches on the leaf litter. Great treasure hunt for kids to do, to go on your big old hazel tree and have a little root around in the kind of bowl, the base of the tree in the leaf litter. They might find a little cache of hazelnuts, of the shells which have been broken open by animals. And if you really know your tracking, you can notice the difference between which animals have nibbled the shell or broken it open, depending on how they fed on that nut, which is really interesting to go into. Here we go. Whoops. There's a load of nuts showing evidence of lots of feeding by wildlife. Different things have harvested that. Some things have cracked them open. Some things have nibbled in and got to the nut inside. But it's lovely to see that. See those little gnaw marks. Good stuff all around. A lovely little kind of nature treasure to find in winter. And of course, the nuts, unlike the leaves, don't fall far from the tree, so they're more reliable as a ID point. There's the bark of hazel. You know, it has a slight peeling quality to it, a bit of a shiny quality to it. Not particularly distinctive, but once you know it, you know it. But a slight peeling quality to it, but you can't peel it like you do the birch bark. But it's good to see. But the key thing, I think, is tree form here. Most hazels have multi-stems because we talked about coppicing earlier, didn't we? They've been cut down and they regrow, and they do that naturally. And people tend to cut them on anywhere from a kind of 3 to kind of 7 year cycle, depending on what they're harvesting it for. But if you're seeing a kind of a shrubby tree with a lot of straight poles all growing up like this from the base, it's likely it's a hazel. It's not the only tree that grows like this, but you know, that would be one of my first ports of call as I start to approach the tree and think, oh, have we got a stand of hazel there? You'll get this in hedgerows too. So this multi-stemmed form, these coppice stools, really a good sign of hazel all round. Okay, folks, there we go. I'll just check the chat again. Brilliant. People talking about different nibble marks you can get from different animals on the hazel. That's interesting. I need to get better at that, but I would love to know the difference between them all. Diana says it's her favorite flower, the hazel flower. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a good one. I like it. I like it because most people don't see it. And it's a really good example of getting people to look closer and they go, oh, wow, look at that. They've never seen the flower on the hazel before. So it's a nice one to give people that wow moment and then get them to look deeper at other trees. Let's look at two trees which often get confused for each other, beech and hornbeam. Okay, now we don't get a lot of hornbeam where I am. It's a tree you get more in southern England. So the more south you are, the more likely you see this. The only ones I see are in country estates where they've been planted. We don't really get it out in the countryside. But it is native to Britain, but it's more native to southern Britain. The same with the beech, actually. It's more native to southern Britain. However, the beech has been planted everywhere. So, you know, although it's native to southern Britain, you see it all over the place. So as we look at the two trunks here, they can look pretty similar. Both kind of smoothish grey bark. The beech more so. But the one person described hornbeam as beech with muscles, and I like that. It's good. It's like it's been at the gym, and we'll see that a little bit on some of the branches, hopefully in the pictures if I've got those ones. But the other thing you get with hornbeam is what you can see here on the left is what they call a fluted trunk. I don't find that particularly useful, that phrase. That's what you see in an ID book. I prefer to describe it as like a Greek or Roman column, because that's what it kind of looks like to me with those bumps in the round, whereas you don't get that so much with the beech. Let's go a bit closer. Here's beech, a very distinctive bark, very smooth, even when mature. It's the bark that people carve their names into and it stays there for all time, for better or worse. Yeah, but the beech has a very smooth bark and a few ripples as well, but doesn't really crack that much. Whereas, you know, oak, ash, ash particularly has smooth bark when it's young, but then does fissure a lot more as it gets old. But beech doesn't really do it as much. So that's a good sign straight away with the beech tree. There's the hornbeam on the left, beech on the right, with that classic writing all over it that you get. People no longer in relationships that have got them carved onto tree for all time. So there we go. But the hornbeam has these vertical deep fissures, these flutes as they're called, going up. You can see one of those deep crags there. So when we get closer, we are starting to see the difference between the two. But one of the key things with beech is what you're seeing on the floor, or even what you're feeling on the floor. And we'll get into that a bit later on. You should see a carpet of beech mast, and you can see nuts here, and you see the mast, which is what contains the nuts there. These fall all over the floor beneath the tree. And this year is a really good mast year. You should be seeing a lot of acorns, a lot of beech nuts, a lot of sweet chestnuts and conkers as well, all over the floor. All the trees have just dumped so many nuts this year. It might be because we've had such a dry year that the trees are stressed. That's one thought. But either way, we've got a lot of mast for us to work with this year. Some years you hardly get any. Like last year was really terrible for acorns and beech mast. But this is really key. You're not going to get this under hornbeam, only under the beech. Looking closer, we can see here we've got the beech mast and some nuts. And those little triangular nuts, which are inside the mast there, really distinctive. Nothing else that looks like that. And in winter, if you open them up, they're probably going to be empty, because if they had anything good inside them, the mice and various other animals will already have snaffled them away. So most of these ones you'll open up and they're empty. But wind the clock back about kind of 3 weeks, a month from where we are now in kind of mid to late-ish November, and you would have got a lot of good beech nuts to eat. And you might still find some now as well. But they are good to eat. They're very nice, a little bit fiddly, but a lot of fun to collect. But at this winter, when we're looking now, most of those shells will be empty, but very distinctive shells. But the hornbeam is very different. Have a look at the seeds here. So although the bark looks kind of similar and the leaves are similar as well, the seeds are very different to the beech. They dangle down in these kind of pendulous clumps that look either like a toilet brush or like the spinning brushes at a car wash. I think of them looking a little bit like that. Kids will probably remember a toilet brush better though. And they're little winged seed cases again. You get the little nutlets in them, and they have 3 little wings that look like a dinosaur's foot, which is quite a nice way of remembering it. Little dinosaur's footprint there, and they're very distinctive. They look very different to what you get with the beech entirely. So you'll see those, and these can hang around in winter. In autumn, you see a lot of them. They're still on the tree now because we haven't had loads of high winds yet. But in winter, you will still see the odd one hanging on, or them on the floor. Let's go to those buds though. So going back, winding back, are the buds opposite or alternate? It's really clear. They are very much alternate, aren't they? That's really obvious there. And the beech buds are very long and thin and pointed, like little spears. Almost you can kind of jab yourself with them. And it's a good way to remember it. Long, thin, spiky, hard buds there on the beech, which do look a little bit different to the hornbeam. Let's have a look. Okay, here are the leaves of the beech. A lot of different finds here. We've got a little collection here of the beech leaves. As I mentioned earlier, leaf litter can be more useful with some trees than others. With the beech, it's particularly useful because they've got lots of tannins in them and they hang around for a good while on the floor. In fact, that leaf litter can build up and up and up. And that's one of the reasons why in beech woodlands you don't get a lot of wildflowers on the floor, because you get such a heavy layer of the leaf litter as well. And also, beech cast a lot of shade. So that kind of suppresses what other wildflowers. You do get the bluebell bulbs, of course, coming up in that sweet spot before the beech really comes into leaf fully. So that's why you get those beautiful scenes of the blue carpet of the woodland floor with beech over the top, those lovely smooth grey spreading trunks. But the beech leaf litter is very reliable to use. Kind of smooth and glossy to feel. Very ovular with a pointed tip, nothing too distinctive there. But, you know, they have got a shiny feel to them. They do hang around on mass. And they do also, as you can see on this twig here, they do hang around on the tree, still attached, in the young trees. Oak do this and beech do this. The young leaves can hang around on the branch the leaves of the young trees. It doesn't happen on mature trees for whatever reason. But if you're seeing a tree which has got brown, crinkly leaves still hanging on in quite abundance on a young tree in winter, it's probably an oak or a beech. It's a good thing to look out for. And there's the mast and the nuts again in the collection. So there we go, folks. Now let's look at the hornbeam. Hornbeam are different. Is it alternate or opposite? It is actually alternate. Not the easiest one to tell there, but there is another cluster of buds here or here. And of course, we're getting multiple buds coming out, aren't we, at the end of these twigs here, but they are alternate actually. The buds are different. They're still thin, but they're a little bit fatter. And I think they've got this very much green and brown mottled color to them, especially towards the end of winter as they're just beginning to swell. They almost look like miniature pine cone or spruce cones to me, I would say. So they do look different from the beech when you compare them. There's the beech, much thinner and pointier, and there's the hornbeam there. There's the hornbeam. Again, very clearly alternate on this picture, aren't they? And you get that zigzagging again. But also the young buds do hug the twig a lot more as well. We've got the leaf litter of hornbeam as well. It doesn't hang around as well, does it? It's not as well preserved as the beech, which is key. You can see these are the best ones I could find in the middle of winter, and they're nowhere near as good a condition as those beech leaves were. They're much more deteriorated. They also like to curl up from the side as well, whereas beech leaves not so much. And also you might notice that they've got a toothed edge to them, whereas the beech leaves have a complete edge. They're just simple. Whereas these have a toothed edge to them. So that's something to look out for with hornbeam as well. But hopefully that is a good crash course there in the difference between hornbeam and beech. Just going to check the chat again, folks. Make sure everyone's all right. Carolyn says that beech leaves have small white hairs along the edge. Yes, they do. You can mostly see them in spring when the leaves first come out. And they do hang around a bit. When they're first out, you do get this very fine line of kind of little silky hairs. You can actually eat beech leaves when they're first out as well. They're very nice, quite acidic. But yeah, it's a good thing to look out for. Good stuff. Okay. Right. I'm going to go on. I'm going to continue with this winter tree information overload, folks. Hopefully everyone's still with us. Here we go. Okay, so ideas for forest school. A few different things that I like to try out here, folks, and games that we do. So, of course, taking kids on a tree ID walk, you know, can have mixed success depending on how interested they are. So what I like to do is mix it up a bit and try and make some of these things into games or sensory activities and get them moving. You know, I'm preaching to the choir here. We like to address all the different learning styles and get kids moving, especially in winter. We want to keep the blood pumping sometimes and not to get them too cold here or there. So we do a tree leaf challenge. Okay, so this is a good one to try out. So rather than just go out and look at leaves, what I do is gather a bunch of leaves in advance. I put 10 types of leaves in one tray, the same 10 types of leaves in another tray, and then I also make a load of labels. Okay, so there we go. I make a load of labels, and what I do is I put the tree leaves in one pile and the labels in another pile. And if there's 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams, they each get their own set of labels and leaves. Then they also get their tree ID guides with the leaves on them. You could do a version of this in winter with twigs. Depending on how skilled the kids are. You can see that tree ID guide there does have winter twigs on. Generally, I do this with leaves. But yeah, you could do it with twigs if they're advanced for sure. And so they have their pile of leaves, their pile of labels, and they have their tree ID guide. So what you do is, those are away from them. And what I say is, right, this is a race, okay, between the different teams. When I say go, one of you is going to run over to your tray of leaves, bring your leaf back, then together you're all going to ID it, agree what it is, and then that person has to run, go and get the matching name tag for it, bring it back and put it with the leaf. And this involves some movement because there's a bit of chase back and forth to grab the different resources as they go. Of course, the team has to agree on it as well. Okay, so it brings a bit of movement to just looking at leaves and get some chasing and matching things up. Also, it means once they've laid it all out, they might say, oh, you know what, I want to actually swap that around. I think that's that now. And what I say with kids as well is when you do this game, if you're the first to finish, that doesn't necessarily mean you win, because if the other team finishes after you, but get them all right, and some of yours are wrong, then they will win. So it's more important to get them right. So if one team's hanging around and think they've done it all, I'll say, look again. Have you got it right? Are you sure? Because if you've got any wrong, then you won't win the game. So it's good fun. And you can make this harder or easier depending on how advanced they are, how many species you want to throw in there. Sometimes I throw in mystery leaves as well that don't match anything. I put a label that doesn't have a matching leaf, or a leaf that doesn't have a matching label. There we go. There's some of our labels with the Welsh names of trees on as well, which adds a whole new element to it as well, which is interesting. So it's a good way of getting the kids moving and doing a chase game and getting some a bit of competitive games going on at Forest School. It's good fun. They always like that one. And as I said, no reason why you couldn't do it with winter twigs. Okay, another one I like to do is this one. Orienteering, I call it. Orienteering with a tree twist. Okay, so I made these little resources, these little orienteering control points that I printed out and laminated. And this is great if there's a site that you work at all the time and you know the site well. Because if you know your trees there, or get to know the trees, hopefully after this webinar, you can start to make an orienteering trail based on tree ID. So you might think, okay, there's 15 trees. Some of them are the same, but we need about 15 to do this little game with them. And what you'll do is you'll put out the orienteering tags on the different trees. They'll go out with their tree ID guides in teams. And if you want to make it true orienteering, there's no reason why you can't have a map, of course. And there's that whole element to the game as well of actually having to get the grid points or find the different contact control points on the map. And they go out and they've got to find the tree. Oh, there's one with the control point on. They look at it and they ID it, and they've got to get it right on their tree ID guide. And on the back of the control point, there'll be a letter. And that way we know that they've been to the point as well, because they'll only know the right letter to put in to the little column on the, whoops, there we go. There we go. There's a zoom messing up. I'll just move myself slightly there so you can see the letters there. So with each one, there's a letter to get. And that's going to make an anagram at the end for them to solve as well. So you can make your own version of this. If you only want to do 8 trees, that's fine, or 10 trees, it's up to you. You can make it as complicated or as simple as you wanted to. But it works really well. And the other thing we say as well, of course, you might be first back. If you've got any of the trees wrong, then you might want to dock points to that. It's up to you. You know your groups, guys, and what works best. But it's a nice little game to play, this Orienteering. Again, it gets them moving, gets them looking. There's the treasure hunt aspect, of course, of finding the tree with a little tag on it. Sometimes I put a leaf label tag, which tells you the tree as well, if I'm doing it with absolute beginners. And so they might look at it on the tree guides, but you follow them as well and say, oh, can you find the actual ID leaf information there? There might be like a little tag. These are great for that. See these Woodland Trust swatch guides? I sometimes use these. I break them apart and laminate them, and use these. So you might get the beach one and actually hide that somewhere on the tree or near the tree as well. And not only do they find out about the beach and have it confirmed what they see in the tree ID, but there's some facts as well on the back, which they can read in the game too. So there you go. There's the anagram for you. The wild service tree is what I did when I was running that game. So they had to kind of work out the name of the tree as well. But that's a good little game. It's good fun. Again, keeps them moving, brings some extra interest to tree ID. Another one you can do is to engage the senses. And again, I'm sure I'm talking to people that are all well aware of this already. But this is engaging the sense of touch with tree ID. So we all know the game where you meet a tree, of course, and you go blindfolded and get to know the tree, and then you've got to walk back to it again when you've got the blindfold off. But this is taking it a little step further and using the sense of touch to ID a tree. So there's 4 examples here where touch can be really useful. There's the elder, of course, with the soft bark that blindfolded you can touch and get to know. What can you feel about the tree? What's significant there? They might notice that. And because they've had their senses enhanced there because they've been blindfolded, I think they're more likely to remember it because there's been a real experience connected rather than just saying, oh, just feel it. But because there was a whole game and then they were blindfolded, they really get that. Another one is, feeling on the ground, crab apples there. What's that? Can they feel it blindfolded? What's that shape? It's round. It's a bit squishy. That's a bit of fun, what is it? And, are they going to work out it's round? Okay, what tree has round fruit that you're going to find in the countryside? What does it feel? Does it feel smooth? Is it an orange? No, it's not an orange. They don't grow in the countryside. You can have that fun with kids, have that conversation and draw out the information from them, try them to get the right tree. Wild cherry bark there on the left, very distinctive bark. You can feel those horizontal ridges when you got your eyes closed, and they're quite easy to feel there, and that peeling quality as well. So that could be a good one to feel as well. And then lastly, you've got the beech mast on the ground. And this is a good one that you can do when you're walking under the tree, especially a big beech tree. Can you feel that crunchiness? Listen as well. What's different here? And get them to use their senses. If you wanted to, you could do this, probably not in winter, but you could do it barefoot with kids and get them feeling what's underneath the ground. And what is it? What will be hard and crunchy under the tree? What will be that? Oh, it's fallen from the tree. And again, start to draw this out. It's good fun to engage your senses. You can do it with hearing as well. There's one tree that you can ID by sound. Well, two you can ID by sound. One is the aspen, Populus tremula, which in windy weather, really the leaves go like this. It trembles, hence the Latin name. That's because the leaf stalks are flat. So they act like little aerofoils, and the wind goes through that makes the leaves do this, and it really makes a racket in heavy wind, so you can really hear it. So that's a good activity to do. You know, it's a really loud tree, and get them to know that with the aspen. The other one is a great one to do, but it's a very specific short window, and that's when acorns are dropping. If you've ever been under a big oak tree when the acorns are dropping, you hear it. Sometimes you feel it as well, but you could be under there and hear the acorns dropping around you. You can imagine a group with their eyes closed. Well, what tree is this? You know, and that can be really good fun. You know, okay, so there's something dropping, but if it's dropping, it must be big, so I can hear it. Okay, so if I can hear it, it must be big. So what's a tree that has something big that drops off it in autumn? Okay, so conga tree, you know, which they could come to that conclusion. That's a bit of fun as well. So engaging the senses all around. You know, if you're into your foraging, you could do taste if you know what you do with some of the berries in autumn, or nuts, for instance. Whatever works, guys. And then just to finish off with ideas for forest school, just a couple of little tree crafts that we've done this year, which is good fun. The dragonfly sycamore, actually those are Norway maple wings, actually, because they're even bigger, so they make really good ones. That's a stick of willow with some hollyberry eyes there. We did that this autumn. That was good fun. So a nice one to incorporate a bit of tree ID. They get to know the Norway maple, then have to walk out and find it, gather the materials. And then just whittling, that's with a bit of Hazel, making a mushroom. Nice, easy little project there. Whittling mushrooms there. Good one for kids to use all around. Okay, folks. Brilliant. So there's some good ideas. If you've got any little forest school ideas, then do pop it in the chat. We'd love to hear about it. That'd be really good. Okay, what have I done there? I've just got rid of the presentation. Okay, folks, just going to check the chat. People are asking about the fold-out guides. We're going to get to recommended books pretty soon. But yes, somebody says, is that the Opal guide? Yes, it is. I think they used to be free. I don't know if they're free anymore. But if they're, you know, for sale, they're certainly worth it. I would say the Field Studies Guide Council one is better, personally. But it depends what you like. Okay, brilliant. Right, so let's go on to the next little segment. Slideshow. There we go. There's me. How are we doing for time? Oh, we've got half an hour. I'm doing all right. I've rattled through this. It's time for a quiz. Okay, folks, it's quiz time. We're going to do a winter trees picture quiz. This is interactive, okay? Again, I can't see the chat today. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to show you a picture. Most of them are going to be montages of trees, which is drawing on what we've been talking about, looking at the whole picture rather than just the twig. There might be bark, there might be leaf litter, there might be remnants of nuts or fruits pictures. So we're looking at the whole thing, and all these things are giving us clues as to what we're looking at. Some of these pictures are going to be ones you've already seen, so that might trigger something. Some of them are going to be a bit cruel, and they're trees we've not even talked about. So it's a bit of a test all round, a bit of fun. If you don't know the tree, look at the details, and when you get the answer, then you'll know as well. But it might be something that you've seen out in the countryside. So let's find out what people know. The other thing is, so what we'll say is we'll give it a few seconds, and then we'll say, put the answer in the chat, and we'll see what comes out and what people get for each one. Okay, can I see the chat? No, I can't. I don't know why. It won't let me see it. Right, here we go. Picture number one. If you know what it is, don't say. We've got 4 clues here. We've got some buds there. Interesting. We've got some leaf litter, which is curled up and dangling, quite pendulous, that leaf litter. Not the easiest sign. Something very distinctive found on the ground there in my hand. And then the bark, which is, I think, #1 feature of this tree in winter. And of course, the great thing about distinctive bark is you can use it all year round to ID, but in winter it really shines out. Okay.
Pretty unanimous.
What are people saying, Matt?
Saying cherry, wild cherry.
They'd be right to say that. The wild cherry. Yeah, absolutely. And there's the little stones, which you've got to look for, but if you can find them, there you go. There's no disputing that. There's the cherry stones on the floor. Absolutely. So the wild cherry bark looks very different to bird cherry, which is our other native cherry. So it's a good thing to know, because if you know the bark, you'll never get them confused. Right. That's, I think, good thing there, Matt. If you leave your sound on, then you can tell me what people are saying. Here we go. Number 2. Here's another montage. We've got a large spreading tree in urban areas often. some leaves and other finds. Very distinctive bark there. Some people in London might be confused as to what this tree is, looking at that bark.
Loads of people saying sycamore.
They would be right. This is sycamore. The bark looks a little bit like London plane. For anybody who knows that tree, we don't really get it round us, but that has that jigsaw-y effect as well. And what that is the bark kind of peels off. And it's a bark that what it's doing is it copes with polluted air, and so when that all gets clogged up, it just peels off and it's got new bark underneath. But sycamore does it as well, which is another reason why it's great in towns, because it also copes with pollution. But the buds, of course, are in opposite pairs, and they're bright green. The other thing you get with sycamore, can you see under here, this green bud here? Can you see this little horseshoe here? This is the leaf scar, where the leaf was joined to the tree. And if you look at this shape here, where my cursor is, that shape, that kind of a curved shape, matches up, with this. And if you can see a big leaf scar under the stalk, it means the tree has a big leaf. So big leaf scar, big leaf. So sycamore and a horse chestnut have big leaf scars. They both have really large leaves. It's another little thing to look out for. Okay, here we go. Number 3. We've got some clues here. Okay, picture of the ground, very smooth bark there. Let's see who's been paying attention today.
Unanimous.
Good.
Ooh, everyone's saying beech.
Good. I'm still in a job, mind you. This is an audience of people who probably know their trees a bit. So I think I could stump you yet. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, next one. It's the beech tree, isn't it? Okay. So 4 clues there to a tree in winter.
Yeah, people paying attention to that one as well.
Good, good. So we've got the elder, the elder tree, Sambucus niger, with those early leaves coming out even as early as January. Okay, and that jelly ear fungus. Okay, let's be cruel. I haven't talked about this tree at all. What's this, folks? Have a little think. Don't put it right away. If you know what it is, give people a chance to look in case they've got the chat open. Are the buds alternate or opposite? What have we got going on at the top there? That's interesting. And then the growth is what I'm showing you in the picture at the bottom there. Any thoughts, Matt? What are people saying?
We've only got one answer back so far. We've got two. We've got crabapple or ash at the moment.
They're both wrong.
Willow has come up. Rowan's come up.
Rowan is correct. This is the rowan tree, or mountain ash, you might know it as. So rowan trees, again, very much do grow with lots of multiple stems. This one's at the side of a road, like hazel. You know, at first glance from a distance, you could confuse it for a hazel, but the buds are very different. The buds are hairy. Okay, look at that. I tend to think of a good way to remember it with kids is the witch's finger, with the because look at these little wrinkles, like stacked pancakes all on top of each other. This wrinkly finger with this nail at the end. It's got this fuzzy hair, like little white fuzz over it. They're hairy buds on the rowan. That's really distinctive. And this is the berry stalks, the cluster that's left over. The berries have all gone, but in winter they can hang about. And you can see these little clusters hanging around. I think, what's that? So that's the stalk of the berries of the rowan tree, the mountain ash. Now, ash trees have their buds in opposite pairs. Mountain ash or rowan have it alternately. So now you'll never get them confused. So there you go, folks. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm being cruel. Here's another one I've not talked about. I started easy, you see. Has anyone got any thoughts here? Have a little look before you put the answer. What are the distinctive features here? There's a couple to me that really stand out on this one. We've got this here.
A few people are saying,
go on.
Goat willow.
Okay.
Or poplar are the two answers.
Poplar would be a good guess because willows and poplars are closely related, and poplars also have this diamond marking, but this is a goat willow. Or pussy willow, same thing. Salix caprea, same tree. Or sallow, or great sallow is another name for it. So there's kind of 4 common names for this tree, but goat willow is what it's most known as. It's the most common willow in this country. Unlike the willows you may think of, it doesn't have long, thin leaves. It has broad leaves on it as well. So there you go, very simple leaf. Look at this pollarding here. Pollarding is coppicing done at height. So the tree's been cut at height, and you often get this with willows where you get all this growth coming out at height. And that's because it's been pollarded, where animals want to graze underneath without munching all the nice new willow growth. Then people come along and keep cutting the willow for firewood or whatever they want it for. But then this is a pollard that's been left to overstood over the years. These diamond marks, very common with willow. You do get it on poplar as well, but you get these little diamond pocks. And then, of course, the back end of winter, you start to get this happening. The little pussy willow, the cat's paws, these are the male catkins coming out. You can stroke them. They're very soft, very tactile thing. Another good sensory one to use with kids there. So that's what you get with those. So there you go. Okay, folks. Here's another one I've not talked about. Have a little look. Some very distinctive leaves here, aren't there?
All people know their trees.
Good. Or they think they know their trees. But are they right, Matt? What do you think?
They're right. Yeah, it's hawthorn.
It is hawthorn, yeah. So hawthorn, obviously it's got the thorns, very distinctive little miniature kind of oak leaves there. They do hang around in winter. The berries can hang around in winter, well past being forageable, but they can hang around. And the wood turns kind of bright orange when you cut it. So if you've got you're cutting some wood in winter, it might well, if it goes like that, it might well be the hawthorn. So again, we're looking at the whole picture all round to build our picture of the tree, rather than just looking at one feature. Okay, this shouldn't be a challenge for people, but it's just nice to see all those features together, really.
Yeah, everyone's saying hazel.
It is the hazel, absolutely. There you go. Those beautiful little sea anemone flowers, the nuts, the male catkins, and that coppice growth. And now I'm going to be cruel and give you this one. This is the difficult one. If you know what it is, don't say straight away. I'll ask questions, guys. Is it alternate or opposite the buds? So the buds are opposite. You can see two of them there, little teardrop buds. What about the leaf? Interesting shaped leaf. Maple-like in its shape. We also have the remains of a cluster here, which have berries on it, like the rowan. So it has berries on it at some point. Do maples have berries?
I think two people have got it right, I think.
And it's a scrubby tree as well. You can see here, nothing grand about it. Okay, what do you think they've got right there, Matt?
So, a few more people. Is it Guelder Rose?
It is Guelder Rose. Well done. It is the Guelder Rose. Now, Guelder Rose is a terrible name for this tree. An old name for it is swamp elder, which I think is much better because it looks like an elder tree that likes damp feet, because it has the clusters of berries like elder, it has similar flowers, and it has scrubby growth and opposite buds. So I'd like to start a campaign to rename this tree the swamp elder again, but it's the Guelder Rose. It might be one you're familiar with or not. It has beautiful red leaves at this time of year. They're still out now, very distinctive. But the leaves do look maple-like, and of course the buds are opposite, so you could confuse it for a young maple. Is that all of them? Yes, it is. Okay, brilliant. I hope everybody did well there. Wow, there's a lot of messages. Yeah, that's great. Look at all of that. Good, well done, folks. Good. Yes, Chris said, is it a viburnum? You are right, Chris. It is a viburnum, Viburnum opulus. The wayfaring tree is also a viburnum. Okay, brilliant, folks. I hope you've enjoyed that quiz there. Now, what's next, folks, while we head towards the back end of the webinar? Book recommendations. Let's talk about that. Some book recommendations and different resources that I recommend. Here we go, folks. So, first of all, classic tree ID books, two that I use all the time. You can tell the more worn they are, the more used they are. Collins Guide to British Trees. Very useful because it's got everything in it. What's good about it is you get a lot of photos of things isolated. There's the alder there with the cones, very nice and isolated against a clean background, which is good, not just the pictures here. I tend to find this stuff a bit more useful. Another tree guide, which I recommend, is the Reader's Digest one, which often you can get on eBay and thing, or in charity shops, secondhand. I think I paid maybe £3-4 for this. They update the covers, but it's the same book. What I like about this one is it's mostly illustrations. So there's the rowan, our mountain ash, nice clear illustrations against a clean background again. So really good book, easy to get hold of. The Reader's Digest to Trees and Shrubs of Great Britain and the Collins Guide. The only thing I'd say about these books are, if you're a beginner or teaching groups, you could probably rip out about 2/3 of the pages out of these books, and they'd still be really quite useful to you out in the countryside, because a lot of stuff in here we don't really need, such as, if I do a random flick, here we go, the sweet gum tree. Never seen it. So there you go. You know, they're good, but there's almost too much information for beginners, but it's a good thing to have on hand. So what I would recommend, especially for winter, is this book here. This is from the Field Studies Council. If you haven't got it for Winter Tree ID, it's great. Field Studies Council, Winter Trees, a photographic guide to common trees and shrubs. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. Look how thin it is. This just shows you what you need to know when you're starting out. Really clear. If we go to hawthorn, look at that. Everything laid out, nice clear features. Look for that, and you've got a hawthorn tree. Really good book. I think it's anywhere between kind of £8 and £12, depending where you buy it from. So it's good stuff all around. Again, the elm, field maple, nicely laid out, very clear, easy book. That's the Field Studies Council, Winter Trees, a photographic guide. Excellent book to check out. If you want to go a bit deeper and want more information on winter twigs, there's this one, the Field Guide to Winter Twigs. Okay, a bit thicker, a bit more information, but lots of stuff on here. This has a lot of illustrations, and it's much more kind of technical, as you can see. You know, it's we haven't got color here. It's just the showing the twigs there and the buds. But if you want to take it deeper, you can do. That's a good book all round to check out. A Field Guide to Winter Twigs by John Poland. There you go. Take a screenshot, folks. That's the book. Good one. Field Studies Council also do these guides. We saw one briefly earlier. Not very useful in winter, but great in summer. So, because it's mostly leaves. But these are great because, you know, they can take a bit of a splash. You know, they're cheap, about £3-4 each, and you can get a few of them for your group. If you haven't got some, they're really good stuff. They don't have a winter twig one, but they do have that book. I'd like to see a winter twig fold-out guide. That's what I would like to see, but they haven't done it yet. But it's also got conifers on here as well. But the great thing about this is that unlike the big Collins guide and the Reader's Digest guide, it just shows you the ones you're probably likely going to see. So it whittles it down for kids. It's not so intimidating. So these are really good resources too. And yeah, those are recommended books. That's what I would say, particularly those 2 winter twig books. Really good stuff. Yeah, some people say tree tools for schools, have some print-off guides. Yep, that's the old Nature Detectives from the Woodland Trust. They changed what they're called. But yeah, there's some good stuff on there. Lots of good stuff all around. Now, folks, while we're here, I'm going to show you some stuff. Just going to get a little link for you guys there and bring that back on, get Zoom back on. I'm going to share my screen. So there's all those book recommendations, but also, there we go. Lots of good stuff there. I would like to borrow 2 minutes of your time just to talk to you about a resource I've created. So there's lots of great books out there. Or if you prefer videos and things, you prefer watching videos about trees rather than reading books, and some people do prefer that way of learning, I have a tree ID course I've created, which is where all these photos are from. Created it, it launched about almost 2 years ago now, but it's taken about 4 years to film across all the different seasons, all the native trees. It's been quite a task. And if you really want to know your trees, you'd be very welcome to come and join us on it. Here it is. Basically, I've created this tree ID course. It's called the Complete Tree ID course, and it will take you from being clueless to confident in being the tree expert in your group, the person who everyone goes to say, what's that tree? You can say, aha, it's this, this, and this. Or rather, with the forest school method, we should say, well, I'm not going to tell you, but maybe you should look for these signs and we'll see what comes out. So there we go. And I'm doing a special offer on this course at the minute. 30% off for Black Friday, and that's actually active now. So all you guys can access that if you're interested. It's available for a limited time. There's a lot of resources in this course. Basically, oh, there we go. There's the picture. You get videos of me for 40 trees in all 4 seasons, standing in various states of damp, cold, sun, wind, and rain. So you don't have to. Looking at all these different trees in different parts of the country, showing you what they look like. So we can look at the box tree in spring. Does it have flowers? The sweet chestnut in summer there with its big leaves. The elder in autumn, and the buckthorn in winter with all the snow there. So you can access all these videos and quickly look at the tree in all 4 seasons and see what's going on with it. With each of these videos, there's also tree ID sheets. So there's these sheets that you can download to your phone and use as like a little app. So you can have a look at the key features of the tree. Or there's, you can print them off. and you can print them off for groups. A lot of and there's a lot of forest school leaders actually on this course already, and they do just that. They print them off and use them for the groups. You can see there you've got Hazel in spring, print off the sheet, and it will show you the 4 things you need to look out for, or ash in autumn, the 4 things you need to know for that. And these trees also talk about similar species too, that you might get them confused with. So really useful resources, easily color coded and very simple for all our native trees. There's also massive photo galleries on there. So for every tree in each season, there's about 10 photos on there as well, all taken on location, all around the country in different times of the year. You can see there's bark, there's catkins, there's flowers, leaves, all kinds of stuff being highlighted, so you can really get to know the tree at all times of year. Because that's the thing, some of these books don't show you what something looks like at one part of the year or not. It just shows you it maybe in summer. But also I've taken loads of photos in studio, so you can really see those features highlighted against a clean background, and maybe use them in your own teaching as a resource as well. Print them off and make your own presentations out of them too. So you can see the goat willow there, oak, rowan, all kinds in different times of year. Lots of resources. We have a Facebook group, a private group for all the people on the course who get to talk about trees and share photos and say, is this what I think it is? And I will answer, or they will answer the rest of the group as well. And we get to share our resources, and I make little videos on there as well when I'm out and about of things I've seen. So you get a private Facebook group you can join too. And that's it. So up to 40 native trees in all 4 seasons, live student-only workshops. So 4 times a year we meet up like this with just the students and talk about trees of the year, and I give them more information, and we give them quizzes and all kinds of things. You get the cheat sheets for all the trees on your phone or to print off and use them with groups. You can get one-to-one coaching with me. So if you're on the top tier of the course, you can get one-to-one with me online, and we can talk about where you're struggling and where you need help. And there's the Facebook group as well. And there's a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you don't like it within 30 days, I'll give you your money back. There you go. You can't say fairer than that, folks. And 30% off for Black Friday. So I will pop the link to that in the chat right now. There it is, folks. Click the link and you should get a new window, and you can check out more about that and see a video of students on the course telling you what they think of it. Thankfully, they all say really nice things. There's a couple of forest school leaders on there as well that you might recognize. So let's go back through. Also, if you sign up before Black Friday, we're doing an early bird deal where you don't only just get the course, we're going to bung in all this as well. You get a ticket to our workshop, which is next Tuesday, which is the transformative power of medicinal mushrooms, which is very interesting, all about how we use mushrooms to heal. We're having Dr. Christopher Hobbs from California come online with us and talk about that. That's going to be fun. And you're also going to get 3 little bonus workshop recordings. One's about best of wild food in autumn, how to identify conifers, and tree foraging with me and Adele Nostar, the author of the Hedgerow Handbook. So we do that as well. So you get all that little bundle as well if you're interested, plus 30% off. So there you go. Use the code Black Friday, 30% off before Monday, 28th of November, if you want to get that, folks. If you're not sure what to do, send me an email and I'll show you where to go. And there should be a link hopefully attached to this video. But wait, there's more before we do our Q&A. If you're not sure you want to buy and get the course, we have a free version. We've got a free taster version with just 3 trees on it. It's called Kickstart Your Tree ID Skills. And if you want to try that out, you can try this course, sign up for free. And if you like it, you might like to get the big course. It's up to you. Or you could just do this one and enjoy it. You get basically 3 trees on there and different videos. You get photo galleries, cheat sheets. It's a taster version of the full course. And if you're interested in that, I'll pop the link to that in the chat room now as well. That's called Kickstart Your Tree ID Skills. Right, that's enough of my spiel. It's time for questions, folks. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to put the link to the free course as well for folks, so you can see the free taster. Oh, and also there's the free tree ID guide that I mentioned at the start of the workshop. I'm going to put the link to that as well. There you go. A winter tree ID guide that you can download. As you do, click that, folks, and the free course as well if you want to test out. But do check out the deal before Black Friday. That's enough of that. Let's do some questions.
James popped this question. I think you asked it earlier as well. Why do some trees have large wart-like structures on the trunk?
Are we talking about, I wonder if Jane is talking about burrs, so oaks particularly, you can get burrs and things like that. Burrs happen for lots of different reasons. A lot of them are kind of bacterial or fungus, things like that, which just create these growth. And what the burrs are is the tree reacting to that, trying to react in whatever way. But it's the same way like you get galls on leaves, or the oak apples and oak galls, things like that. It's another version of that. But what you do get inside is some beautiful wood. And of course, wood turners love to get their hands on these burrs and to turn them into beautiful bowls. You get these lovely swirls on them. But there's all kinds of reasons why. Often it's bacterial as to what's happened there. But it doesn't kill the tree, these burrs. Canker is different. That is actually an attack on the tree, but these burrs don't kill it. It's just like some of us have warts. That's why trees are beautiful, aren't they? They have all these different kind of lumps and bumps on them.
A few people that I've worked with have been wondering about the difference on particularly on silver birch, about chaga versus a burr, and the differences that you get between that fungal growth and the burrs, because sometimes they can look a little bit similar, can't they?
Yeah, so chaga is one, isn't it? Now with chaga, it's not one I really know. I know of it because of bushcraft, but it's not one I've actually seen out in the wild myself. It's more common in Scotland, but you do get it around and about. Lots of messages of thanks. Thank you very much, folks. But yeah, chaga does look a little bit like a burr. There's kind of black stuff coming out, and it's a great fire lighting resource as well. But it's not super common in this country, so we need to be careful about harvesting it. Right, questions, folks. Questions.
There are a few other questions about Latin names and the etymology of the different Latin names. I'll see if I can find it.
Oh, I'll do my best.
I think one was about the etymology of that word sticky. Thank you, Wildcat Learning.
That's a really good question. You know what? I've read the answer to why it's glutinosa and I can't remember it. But you're right, it is something being sticky on there. What I can tell you as a fun fact about alder is that they do fix nitrogen. They have these nitrogen fixing nodes on their roots. If you ever see the roots, they have these little yellow kind of bumps on them, and they're nitrogen fixing nodes. That's why alder is a good one for woodland, or for woodland creation long term, because it improves the soil all round. But I do know the answer to your question about glutinosa, and I've forgotten it. These facts sometimes go in my head and then disappear. But yeah, you're right. There is something with the stickiness there.
There's one question about deer damage.
Yes.
Having deer damage on the trees.
Yeah, so deer damage. So deer are a problem with trees. We have too many deer in this country because there's no apex predator apart from us. And so there's a lot of deer. And so because there are too many in this country, they are over browsing woodland. And what they're doing is they are attacking young trees and doing what deer do. They're not doing anything wrong. But because they're out of balance, then they are preventing new woodland from regenerating in places where there's too many. So there is quite a lot of a call to have deer controlled. There's also quite a movement for people saying, you know, what if you want to eat meat, why not eat deer? Because it's not farmed and it's wild. And maybe we should be eating a lot more venison rather than, you know, farmed meat as well. But that's a whole different argument. But yes, deer are a problem. Grey squirrels are a problem too, because they gnaw a lot of the bark and get to the sweet sap underneath. So foresters don't like grey squirrels because they cause deformities and different growths to the tree, which can look great, but reduce the value of the timber of the tree, but can also very much harm the tree too.
There was one on Sycamore. Oh, sorry, I can't see that one. I have to catch that one. Some sycamore things cut into the bark. Small squares. Oh no, silver birch. That was it. Silver birch.
Yeah.
Developed small squares cut into the bark around the base. Any ideas?
Small squares cut into the bark. The only thing I've seen is on lime trees, which is where you get woodpecker marks like pocks. It looks a little bit like we saw with the willow, those diamond marks, but you get these lines of marks. I think I've seen it on bird cherry as well. And that's a woodpecker. What they're doing is they're tapping into the tree and they're tapping it and they're getting the sap underneath. And you see these lines, these pock marks, and that's woodpecker work, usually a great spotted woodpecker. And they make these lines, these pocks. I've not seen it on birch trees. So I've not seen that those cut squares. I'd be interested to see a picture of that if somebody's got it. Yeah, see what you're talking about. It'd be interesting.
And then Hannah says, what causes trees to have dead trunks alongside live ones, as shown on some of those slides?
Loads of different reasons. So if it's in a woodland, it could be because it's self-selecting. So there might be a stronger limb that's getting more sunlight and it's decided, you know what, we forked and actually I don't want this one anymore, so I'm going to kill that one off. It could be because that one's got some disease or bacteria for some reason and it's just not doing well. It could be even older trees. I mean, veteran trees, they do this naturally. So it's called retrenchment. And that's when you see old trees, they have these stag heads out of them, these stag horns sticking out. And that doesn't mean that the tree is imminently dying. It's just very slowly dying. And what it's doing is, as trees get really fat and old, they get wider and lower, a bit like us. They can't push all their nutrients up to the big extremities. So what they do is they shut them down. And they shut these down in order to concentrate on being more squat and keeping everything here. And when there's wind, of course, they've got a lower center of gravity, so they're going to last for longer. So when you see, particularly oaks and sweet chestnuts and things like that do this, you see these stag tops on them, and that's natural. They're just killing those off naturally and putting the growth down here. What you'll see is a lot more growth at the base of the tree, this epicormic growth, and that's the tree reshaping itself to live a lot longer. It is dying, but it's naturally dying over a few hundred years. It's not like usually because of disease with these big veterans.
There was a question about sycamores. I knew I'd seen the word sycamore there. About sycamores only peeling if there's pollution. Is that true?
I can see Oz. It's a good question, Oz. I don't know the answer to that. That's certainly why they do well in polluted areas, same as the London Plain. But I don't know if that's the only reason they peel. But certainly when it gets clogged up, that seems to be what happens with it. But whether it happens in clean air, I don't know. Good question.
Yew does the same thing, doesn't it? Yew has that sort of
It does, yeah.
And
under yew, you get these beautiful kind of blood reds and purples on it, which is lovely stuff all around. People love my wallpaper. It's nice, isn't it? So, this woodland, it never rains in this woods. It's great. Right, how are we doing, folks?
After what length of time do non-native trees qualify as naturalized?
That's a good question. So the naturalized trees we think of are sycamore, horse chestnut, and sweet chestnut are probably the three big ones. Sweet chestnut came in with the Romans, it's thought. So there we go. It's just under about 2,000 years. Horse chestnut and sycamore, it's thought came in around the 1600s, I think, maybe a bit later. Maybe it's either 1600s or 16th century. I forget the two. Around there. And so, yeah, they've been here a few hundred years. I don't know if there's an actual, it's been here so long, but there'd be an argument for certain things being naturalized, now. Trying to think one off the top of my head. Is larch naturalized? It's around a lot. Sitka spruce, things like that. Some people would say they're naturalized, but really they belong in forestry, don't they? Very much in planted situations where you can get your sweet chestnut, horse chestnut, sycamore in the countryside. You can find them around about the place.
Different types of birch trees. More information on velvet birch.
Someone always asks about the difference between the two birch trees. So we have two birch trees in this country, two native ones. There's actually three, but we don't need to worry about the dwarf birch, which is only found in the Highlands of Scotland. So we have the downy birch and the silver birch. For wildlife purposes and for bushcraft uses and for their place in the ecosystem, they're pretty much the same. And for the way we can use them for crafts. But the downy birch tends to be more northwest and wet areas. Whereas the silver birch is more kind of southern Britain, drier land, that kind of thing. The downy birch tends to have a more diamond-shaped leaf, and the silver birch has more of a triangular-shaped leaf. And the downy birch, hence its name, has down on it. So Betula pubescens is its name. It has a pubescence to it. There's downiness on the twigs and a bit on the leaves as well. However, the two trees hybridize. So you can often see features of both trees on the same tree. So it's not always super clear. So it's more important you go, it's a birch. But there are some sites where it's more clear, where you think, oh, you know what? Yeah, all of these are silver birch. Or all of them are downy birch, whereas some sites have been, and I've been looking at it going, God, it's showing both. The other thing with silver birch is the Latin name is Betula pendula. And it has pendulous branches that hang down and sway in the wind. So if it's got those hanging down branches, that's pretty much always silver birch. That's another thing, whereas downy birch doesn't really do that. But they do hybridize because nature loves to not be pinholed.
Around near me, we've got silver birch that are definitely not silver either. They look more like hazel, but actually they are a type of birch that I believe with that hybridization. Where they actually have that sort of greeny mottled bark that doesn't have that pure whiteness.
Brilliant, good stuff.
got time for a couple more. Swamp cypress, why do they lose their leaves in winter as it's coniferous?
Which tree?
The swamp cypress.
You know what? I don't know the swamp cypress. I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm talking about. But the
Oh, well.
larch lose their needles in winter as well, don't they?
Yeah.
That's the other one. And larch is a good one. Right now, larch is looking lovely yellow because it turns this lovely gold. So in winter, it's a great one to know because it's pretty much the only conifer tree you see on Mast which has no needles on it. But if the swamp cypress loses it as well, that's what I need to look at. But it's not a tree I know.
Metasequoia. One of the sequoias, maybe.
Interesting. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Wildcat learning. Cheers. Interesting. Good.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much, James. We've had so many really positive comments and messages of thanks, and I can only echo those because it's been really, really lovely to have you here and to share your knowledge with us. And thank you everyone for turning up as well. Don't forget to register for the next one, the Yuletide celebration with John Cree. And all the links in this the chat and everything, hopefully Lou will put into an email that she'll send out with the recording that when it's uploaded onto our YouTube channel.
Brilliant. Well, thank you folks for spending your time. We really appreciate it. If you want to know about anything more about the stuff I've talked about tonight, all the courses and things, drop me a line. It's woodlandclassroom.com is the website. And yeah, thanks for having us. It's been really nice and looking forward to more. I'm going to come on next month, hopefully, and learn all about celebrating Yule and things we can do for Christmas in the woods. So it'll be fun.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night. Bye-bye, folks. Bye-bye.